Hey everyone, let's dive into some fascinating market insights that could change how you view the current crypto landscape. XRP's path to new highs, why this critical market moment could define everything, what's driving XRP toward potential new highs. The answer lies entirely in Bitcoin's performance and the broader cryptocurrency market dynamics. Right now, we're witnessing a pivotal moment for the altcoin sector, and frankly, this represents one of the most crucial periods XRP holders have ever faced. Market sentiment hasn't reached these fearful levels in years. We're talking about fear comparable to what we witnessed during the FTX collapse. Altcoins are experiencing unprecedented suppression relative to their performance capabilities, which makes XRP's current strength absolutely remarkable. In its entire 13-plus year existence, XRP has never demonstrated this type of resilience under such challenging conditions. However, let's be completely honest here. XRP has never embarked on a truly explosive rally without the entire market being red hot. After examining 16 years of cryptocurrency chart history, it becomes crystal clear that meaningful parabolic rallies for any cryptocurrency during cold market conditions are extraordinarily rare. I can recall perhaps one example off the top of my head, Chainlink's impressive rally during June or July 2019. Even then, we were emerging from bear market depths, yet nothing else was rallying. While such occurrences are possible, they're exceptionally uncommon, and XRP has never achieved this feat independently. This is precisely why I'm emphasizing that this moment is absolutely critical. Whatever direction the broader market takes, XRP will follow. That's the fundamental argument I'm presenting today. Nevertheless, I maintain unwavering confidence that our best days lie ahead. Something particularly interesting struck me recently. Among the chart analysts I follow, only a handful have turned bearish or expressed concerns about potentially entering a bear market. I share their perspectives because balance is essential. I want to present all viewpoints, even those that might not align with our preferences. But here's what's fascinating. None of these bearish analysts, literally zero of them, are citing macroeconomic conditions as their reasoning. They're exclusively examining charts while completely ignoring crucial elements that absolutely must be considered when reaching strong conclusions about probable market developments. How can anyone look solely at charts and claim strong conviction about market direction? It's like attempting to complete a puzzle while deliberately ignoring essential pieces. Are you certain about that approach? Because I'm definitely not convinced. Macroeconomic factors genuinely matter, and that's partly why some analysts were caught off guard during November's market turbulence caused by tariff discussions. I maintained strong conviction during that situation, and it wasn't based on chart analysis. It stemmed from understanding the unique circumstances surrounding Trump's rhetoric. We know he frequently makes statements that initially spook markets. In this case, his tariff threats were simply a bargaining tactic, speaking harshly about proposed tariffs as an intimidation strategy without intending permanent implementation. He's exhibited this pattern multiple times. History has vindicated this perspective, proving my analysis correct. This example illustrates why numerous macroeconomic factors, liquidity conditions, policy changes, and more are being overlooked by many doomsday predictors. As I record this analysis, XRP sits at $2.21, while Bitcoin trades at $94,371. For reference, it's currently 5:47 p.m. Central Time on Sunday, November 16th, 2025. The total market capitalization has declined to $3.1 trillion. Consider this perspective. Just over a year ago, XRP was trading at 49 cents. Bitcoin was around $50,000 or $60,000. You can verify the exact pre-election price, and the total market cap was approximately $2.2 trillion. We're currently sitting nearly $1 trillion higher than our position just over a year ago. Bitcoin has reached these levels, XRP has achieved these levels, yet market sentiment shows extreme fear unlike anything we've witnessed in years. Examine the Crypto Fear and Greed Index. It's currently at 10 out of 100, indicating extreme fear. This level has persisted for 2 consecutive days, which is exceptionally rare. This type of reading typically occurs during the depths of extreme market despair, yet it's not based on historical precedent that would justify such sentiment. How can anyone seriously argue we've reached an actual market peak when there was no euphoria? This simply isn't how market cycles conclude. It never has been, and it wouldn't make sense to believe this time is different. Chart analyst Decode posted something particularly insightful. I don't care what you think. I don't care about your 2021 fractal. 10 on fear and greed for 2 days in a row is rare and making of a bottom. I completely agree with this assessment. This isn't suggesting we've bottomed at the end of a bear market. It's indicating a local bottom formation. Chart analyst Matthew Hyland reposted this with a simple agreed. And I share that sentiment because this reflects normal human behavior. I don't believe humans will suddenly start acting differently. When you have similar situations with large sample sizes of human participants, they tend to behave consistently with historical patterns. Here's another perspective from chart analyst Mustache regarding the crypto total market cap excluding Bitcoin. That's the total 2 chart. He states hash altcoins. That's the generational bottom for total 2. The fear and greed index is at 10. This range around 7 to 10 has always signaled a bottom over the last 7.5 years. This chart plus the index is a big sign. Absolutely. When the fear and greed index reaches these levels combined with this chart analysis, it's compelling evidence. Altcoins are severely suppressed compared to Bitcoin, but markets consistently find bottoms. They always discover bottoms. This is why when naysayers were criticizing XRP last year while examining the XRP BTC chart, I acknowledged not knowing exactly where the bottom would occur, but I pointed out that comparing our current position to previous cycles clearly shows markets find bottoms. We were operating roughly within that historical range. It's obvious even without advanced technical analysis skills. So you're suggesting that we're basically at generational bottoms for altcoins, yet they'll somehow drop another 90% because we're suddenly in a bear market. I'm not buying that argument. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it without ego affecting me, but I'm sharing my honest assessment. I simply don't see that scenario unfolding. On-chain analytics firm Sentiment provided this insight. Though not a guaranteed crypto bottom signal, probabilities of a market reversal greatly increase when social dominance for Bitcoin surges during Friday's dip below $95,000. Discussion rates hit a 4-month high, signaling severe retail panic and FUD. Exactly, there's substantial fear, uncertainty, and doubt circulating. Yet we're significantly better positioned than we were just over a year ago. My net worth is substantially higher than it was 12 months ago. People are panicking because they lack proper historical perspective. They're reacting to momentary conditions, flying by the seat of their pants emotionally. Whatever's happening in the present moment drives their emotions. If you've been involved in crypto for several years and maintained broad exposure while simply waiting, I don't understand how you couldn't be better off. Obviously, if you purchased more recently, price declines are frustrating. I've experienced that during my 8 years in crypto. But you know what I did? Absolutely nothing. I allowed time to pass, and eventually my cryptocurrency holdings became worth a fortune compared to my initial investment. Welcome to investing. This is fundamental stuff. Popular chart analyst Alex Y, whom I've started following more recently, shared this insight. Major rally doesn't announce itself, it just shows up. One breakout can flip the whole market, and most people only realize it after prices are already up 50 to 100%. Many calling the cycle over forget that crypto can go from "it's so over" to "we're so back in an hour." This general sentiment is absolutely accurate. Things happen rapidly in cryptocurrency markets. It's only over until suddenly it's not, and one day you wake up to find the market pumping, restoring everyone's happiness. That's no way to live. Don't base emotions, especially negative ones, purely on temporary market movements. It simply doesn't make sense. Of course, the market will trend higher over time. With a sufficiently long time horizon, none of these temporary fluctuations matter anyway, which is why I keep emphasizing that this fear doesn't make sense. During my 8 years in cryptocurrency, I've experienced countless moments that felt exactly like this. None of them marked the end of the world, and neither will this one. Many people need to hear this message right now, so please take it to heart. This is no different from other scary moments during my 8-year crypto journey. Number goes up. The chart trends upward and to the right over time, especially for functionally useful coins like XRP. It couldn't be more obvious that XRP is an early winner in the crypto space. As more money flows into the sector, we'll continue thriving. We just don't control when the market pumps. Even if I'm wrong and we're entering a bear market, I'll still win because I'm not changing my strategy. I don't control that aspect anyway. While I'm entitled to speculate about market direction just like everyone else, ultimately it doesn't matter for me because it won't change my actions. I'll continue holding until I'm enticed to sell someday. Make peace with what you cannot control and focus on what you can control, which is basically just ensuring you have market exposure when it inevitably rallies upward. I want that exposure. Even if I believed there was a 95% probability of entering a bear market, I wouldn't take action because I want exposure during the inevitable upside movement. By removing myself from the situation, I'd be creating risk. I'm my own greatest investment risk, so after purchasing assets, I do nothing. This approach works. Tom Lee, whom I greatly respect despite some people's skepticism about him, has an impressive accuracy rating. He was certainly correct about the Trump tariff situation not being catastrophic. Here's his perspective on Bitcoin specifically, which matters because the entire asset class moves together, even if you primarily care about XRP like I do. He explains, Bitcoin is a volatile asset. We first recommended Bitcoin to Fundstrat clients in 2017. He notes they recommended just a 1 or 2% allocation, basically a tiny position to get off zero. Bitcoin was worth approximately $1,000 then. Since then, over 8.5 years, Bitcoin has experienced 6 declines greater than 50% and 3 declines exceeding 75%. In 2025, Bitcoin achieved 100 times return from his first recommendation. His takeaway, to have gained from that 100 times supercycle, one had to stomach existential moments to hodl. Why? Crypto prices are discounting a massive future, so doubts create volatility. Today, we believe ETH is embarking on that same supercycle. Whether you support Ethereum or not, I've held ETH since 2017 alongside Bitcoin. He's absolutely correct about the entire asset class. There will be certain winners, and I believe XRP is one of them. Choose whatever makes sense to you. I gravitate toward large caps because the world broadly agrees with their value. Consider this. Even though Bitcoin is up 100 times from when he first advised client exposure, there were still 75% drawdowns and multiple declines exceeding 50%. That's enormous volatility to endure. I've been here since 2017, starting later in the year when I first bought Bitcoin around $6,500. Obviously that looks like a steal now, but I've experienced everything since then. With XRP, I bought and then endured a more than 90% drop without selling anything. I'm still holding, because that's what it takes. I understood this entering crypto. It's highly volatile. My conviction remains strong, and I found that simply holding and doing nothing over time actually works. Hunter Horsley, CEO at Bitwise, offered this perspective. We talk about 4-year cycles, but the reality is that model is based on a bygone era of crypto. Since the launch of Bitcoin ETFs and new administration, we've entered a new market structure with new players, new dynamics, new reasons people buy and sell. I think there's a pretty good chance that we've been in a bear market for almost 6 months and are almost through it. The setup for crypto right now has never been stronger. This is definitely a fresh perspective. I haven't encountered anyone claiming we've actually been in a bear market for 6 months and are now exiting it, about to burst upward. The argument depends on how you define a bear market, since everyone uses this term differently. Historically, economics defines recession as 2 back-to-back quarters of negative GDP. That's the technical definition applied retrospectively. But what constitutes a crypto bear market? Everyone has different ideas. When I think bear market, I consider how it's historically been described throughout crypto's entire history. I don't use unusual parameters. Broadly speaking, most would agree it involves dramatic market value drops after peak euphoria. If we're just fluctuating sideways, is that really a bear market? Historically, that's not what we've called bear markets. His argument partly depends on definitions here. However, I appreciate his acknowledgement that things are changing, citing macro conditions and various parameters. I still believe the most important macro condition involves the business cycle, particularly debt refinancing, pushing the 4-year cycle toward a 5-year cycle. Raoul Paul's argument becomes increasingly compelling as time passes. It's either that, or this time is different and we're entering a bear market, which I find harder to believe. Hunter Horsley also explained, here's what I see happening on 4-year cycles. Common view. People believe in 4-year cycles and that 2026 will thus be a down year for Bitcoin. First order effect. People thus sell in 2025 to avoid the down market year. Second order effect. The 2025 sellers cause 2025 to be a down year, thus breaking the 4-year cycles. Third order effect. 2026 is open season, 4-year cycles broken. Even if there's truth to this perspective, and it's not unreasonable, I still favor Raoul Paul's analysis more strongly. Increasingly, as time passes, I'm buying into that, because it's either that or we're entering a bear market, which makes no sense for numerous reasons. Raoul Paul continues believing his thesis, stating, how I see it, the debt refi cycle is the cycle. It always has been, and liquidity is the only way to manage it. It always has been. He's arguing that debt refinancing determines cycle length, not arbitrary timing. If this cycle lasts 5 years, it's not a this time is different situation. It's always been the debt refi cycle. Time doesn't drive everything else. Rather, the debt refi cycle drives time, and everything else aligns accordingly. I find this compelling because there's substantial data supporting it. This explains why the 4-year cycle has existed since the Great Financial Crisis, and you can observe how traditional finance has responded accordingly. It's extremely difficult to dispute this logic. I believe Raoul Paul is correct about this fundamental mechanism. We're at a critical juncture, but all signs point toward this being an opportunity rather than disaster. Stay focused on the bigger picture, maintain your conviction, and remember that in crypto, fortunes are made by those who can weather the storms and hold through the noise. So here's something interesting. Merlin the Trader just dropped a bombshell observation about Bitcoin. He's saying this recent breakdown might actually be a massive trap for retail investors. Here's what caught my attention. Even though Bitcoin dipped below the wedge pattern, the RSI divergence is lighting up green like a Christmas tree. And do you know what this means? This is exactly when retail investors panic and sell everything while the smart money quietly loads up their bags. Think about it. When has the crowd ever been right at major turning points? This reminds me of something I've noticed over the years. When the market is drowning in extreme fear, guess who's not afraid? The smart money. They're actually getting excited because they know what's coming. Let me share a personal story that perfectly illustrates this. Remember November 2022? FTX had just collapsed, the crypto world was in complete chaos, and everyone was convinced we were heading straight to zero. But you know what I was doing? I was absolutely thrilled. While people were screaming that the sky was falling, I went on the biggest buying spree of my life. Everything was so incredibly cheap, it was like a massive clearance sale on the future of finance. And guess what happened? Fast forward a few years, and those worthless investments are now worth way more. Here's the thing. While everyone else was panicking and saying, we're going lower, this bear market will never end, I had a different perspective. Sure, I couldn't predict the exact bottom, nobody can. But my conviction was rock solid, give it enough time, and we'll go higher. Even if prices dropped further after I bought, it didn't matter. That's the beauty of having a long-term vision. You don't need to catch the perfect bottom. You just need patience and conviction. Now, let's look at what some top analysts are actually saying right now. Chart analyst Dom recently warned that Bitcoin could test the $90,000 level. But here's the key point. He believes this could be forming a local low, not the end of the world. Crypto wizard Bitcoin put it perfectly in a post from just this afternoon. He said, we're at decision time. Yes, this correction has been brutal, but it's actually not as severe as previous ones. Bitcoin has only declined 25.39%. That's less than both prior major corrections. The uptrend is still intact for now. Here's something important I want to share with you. I follow dozens and dozens of chart analysts, and I'm always transparent about what I'm seeing. If I notice a bunch of them flipping bearish, I'll tell you immediately. I'll highlight every single one. But here's the reality. Out of all the analysts I follow, maybe only 3 or 4 have even hinted at serious concern. Some are saying it would be a gamble to stay bullish here. Others are warning about a serious chance of entering a bear market. But notice what they're not saying. They're not definitively calling for doom and gloom. And here's what's really telling at. Every single one of these cautious analysts is completely ignoring the macro picture. That's a huge red flag for their analysis. This brings me to a crucial point about human behavior in markets. What we're seeing right now, this is exactly how you'd expect retail investors to behave. They panic, they sell at the worst possible times, they let emotions drive their decisions. But smart money? Smart money acts like smart money. They don't get caught up in the fear. They don't panic sell. They see opportunity where others see disaster. Let me be completely transparent with you. There's a reason I'm so passionate about this topic, especially when it comes to XRP. Yes, I'm biased. XRP is my favorite cryptocurrency, and it's my largest individual holding. I'm not hiding that from you. But here's why this bias actually strengthens my analysis. I've put my money where my mouth is. I've lived through multiple market cycles. I've seen this pattern repeat over and over again, and I've profited from understanding the difference between smart money behavior and retail panic. Whether we're talking about the stock market, crypto, or specifically XRP, the strategy that works is simple but difficult to execute. Buy when others are fearful, hold when others are impatient, and trust in the long-term vision when others are focused on daily noise. This approach has worked for me across every investment category I've touched. The challenge isn't understanding the strategy, it's having the emotional strength to actually execute it when the market is testing your resolve. The bounce will come. The question is, will you be positioned to benefit from it, or will you be another retail investor who sold at exactly the wrong time? Remember, in investing, time in the market beats timing the market, but only if you're brave enough to stay the course when everyone else is running for the exits. Now, you might be wondering, why am I spending so much time talking about Bitcoin when I'm clearly passionate about XRP? Here's the truth. Everything that happens with Bitcoin directly impacts what happens with my XRP and the rest of my altcoin portfolio. That's reality. If you want the complete picture of where this market is heading, you absolutely must understand macroeconomics. You can't just look at one piece of the puzzle and expect to make smart decisions. This brings me to an analyst I've recently discovered who's quickly become one of my favorites, Psychedelic. What sets him apart? He's genuinely data-driven and doesn't just focus on charts. He considers macro factors too, which is exactly what more analysts should be doing. Instead of just drawing lines on charts and calling it analysis, he's looking at all the pieces of the puzzle. That's how you come to reasonable conclusions about what actually makes sense in the market. Psychedelic recently shared a Bitcoin price chart that completely flips the current narrative on its head. At the top, you'll see Bitcoin dominance BTC. D, that's what. The D stands for dominance. At the bottom, there's Bitcoin's price, going all the way back to 2015. Here's his game-changing observation. All coins have begun their outperformance at the exact time that every single person has given up on them. The cycle isn't done yet. How can it possibly be when we still have dominance just under 60% with several very key bearish confirmations? Think about that for a moment. Right, when everyone throws in the towel, that's precisely when altcoins start their explosive runs. Here's something that blows most people's minds. Bitcoin dominance actually crashes hard when Bitcoin enters its final parabolic leg. This isn't because Bitcoin isn't bullish. It absolutely is. It's because Bitcoin entering that final stage creates incredibly bullish conditions for everything else, and altcoins have much further to run. Let me explain this in simple terms. When Bitcoin starts its final parabolic rally, altcoins have often been beaten down to historic lows against Bitcoin. But here's the thing about markets. They find bottoms. Even if you can't predict the exact day, week, or month when altcoins will bottom out, if you have functioning eyeballs, you can see they're somewhere in that range on the charts. They're at roughly historic lows, which means they have massive room to catch up. That's exactly why, as altcoin holders and XRP holders, we are not done, not even close. Look at the chart. Psychedelic shared, when Bitcoin enters price discovery mode, Bitcoin dominance drops hard. This pattern is clear as day when you study previous cycles. You can see exactly what happens to dominance when Bitcoin approaches its end-stage rally. The pattern is remarkably consistent. Now, you might notice that Bitcoin dominance was higher in previous cycles. Why? Simple math. Back in 2017, there were only about 1,600 coins in existence. Today, CoinMarketCap tracks tens of thousands of cryptocurrencies. It was much easier for Bitcoin to maintain higher dominance when there were fewer competitors. But here's what matters. The directional movement is identical. The pattern still holds true regardless of the absolute percentages. Here's where things get really exciting. Psychedelic points out that when Bitcoin enters price discovery, dominance drops hard. And this is happening simultaneously with Total 3 BTC and Total 3 ETH bottoming and beginning a reversal. For those who might not know, Total 3 represents the top 125 cryptocurrencies, excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum. When you compare these altcoins against Bitcoin or Ethereum on the charts, they're showing clear signs of a bottom and the start of a reversal. His conclusion? Altcoins are looking more bullish than they have looked in years. Think about that statement. We have Bitcoin dominance teetering on the edge of a cliff. Altcoins are completely oversold. And for the first time in 3 years, alts are finally showing strength against Bitcoin. Here's what really caught my attention in his analysis. Even in the absolute worst case scenario where Bitcoin has already topped, altcoins will still explode on Bitcoin's next bounce higher to close out the cycle. And honestly, I completely agree with this perspective. Even if those analysts calling for a Bitcoin bear market turn out to be right, it's absolutely silly to think money won't flow into altcoins. I mean, seriously, what's the actual argument for why human behavior would suddenly stop being human behavior? I haven't seen anyone provide a good explanation for this yet. If someone has a compelling argument, I'll absolutely highlight it on my channel. But show me the evidence, because I haven't seen it, and frankly, I don't believe it exists. The best case scenario? Bitcoin continues higher into price discovery, and altcoins continue to outperform, eventually leading to the biggest period of altcoin outperformance we've ever witnessed. As Psychedelic emphasizes, this isn't just opinion. These are what the charts are telling us. Bitcoin dominance is bearish. Total 3 is bullish. Total 3, BTC is bullish. And here's the historical fact that can't be ignored. Altcoins have always run at the end phase of every cycle. Whether that end comes sooner or later, altcoins are getting their run. The data supports this conclusion. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if this market cycle extends into Q1 or even Q2 of next year. Why? Because I'm finding Raoul Pal's argument increasingly compelling. It's not that this time is different, it's that the fundamental driver remains the same. Debt refinancing cycles control the timeline. Everything else just responds to that underlying rhythm. So even if we're extending out another full year, the same patterns and principles apply. Let me shift focus to what you're really here for. XRP analysis. Dusty BC Crypto recently shared an 8-hour XRP USD chart that tells a compelling story. His take? A massive move is still pending. XRP is still inside this place, bearish correction pattern. And we have entered the final phase for quite some time now. Expect a massive move in the coming weeks. Here's what I keep seeing from analyst after analyst. Either XRP has already bottomed, or it's extremely close to bottoming. The consensus is building. Charter also weighed in, noting that EW5 has gone to plan. Will the line hold to mark Wave 5's completion? We're about to find out. He's tracking a specific trend line that he considers crucial, and so far, we're still holding above it. This could mark the completion of the corrective wave structure. What does all this mean for us as XRP holders? The technical analysis, the macro picture, and the historical patterns are all aligning. We're in the final phase of what could be an epic setup. The altcoin season that everyone's been waiting for isn't just coming, the foundation is being laid right now, while most people are focused on short-term noise and missing the bigger picture. Charter isn't saying we have to break to the upside immediately, but he's identified a crucial level to monitor. If XRP loses $2.20, we could see a move closer to $2. But here's the key point. Even on lower timeframes, this is just a moment to watch for short-term traders. On the higher timeframes, nothing is fundamentally broken. In fact, his analysis reinforces this perspective. He's still targeting that breakout level he previously charted at $20.46 per XRP. His latest observation? Zooming into the fractal, the bull flag, pennant structure holding above the 2021 highs should not be ignored. $20 breakout target. $2 is foundational support. Notice he's not wavering on this outlook, even slightly, even if we see lower prices first. Chart analyst Tara has a similar perspective, though she's warning we could potentially see XRP drop to $2.25, maybe even $1.88. But here's what's exciting. Even if that happens, she believes that would mark the absolute bottom and set up an ultimate reversal. I'm seeing this same perspective from dozens of analysts I follow. The consensus is building around a bottom formation. Charting Guy shared something yesterday that's worth repeating since we're discussing XRP specifically. He believes that stronger coins like XRP have already bottomed for this current correction. His take? We've already seen the worst of it. He does mention that some altcoins might chop around until early to mid-December before bottoming out, and he'll reevaluate everything in late January. But notice what he's not doing. He hasn't flipped bearish. He's still expecting upward price action for XRP regardless of broader market conditions. Here's something that might shock some people. Markets actually do find bottoms. Believe it or not, it's true. I was shouting this about XRP throughout pretty much all of 2024. And guess what happened? The market found a bottom and then rocketed higher. We hit an all-time high of $3.65, which, by the way, I was told by certain experts would never happen. Turns out it did happen. Funny how that works. Here's some perspective that might help calm your nerves. This current dip is just a blip on the radar. A year from now, nobody is going to remember this moment. It's not going to matter one bit. And here's the thing. Even if Raoul Pal is correct and we're heading into a bear market a year from now, I still won't panic. I'll simply understand that's the natural rhythm of markets and start planning for the next bull cycle. It's never actually time to panic unless you're a typical retail speculator living in constant fear. But that's no reasonable way to live your life. Yes, this is a critical moment in time, but I still firmly believe the best is yet to come for this market cycle. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. I'm just telling you what I honestly think based on all the evidence I'm seeing. But here's the beautiful thing. Even if I'm wrong about the short-term timing, I'll still be right if you just let enough time pass. Why? Because markets rebound. You'll find yourself in another bull market at some point in the future. That's exactly why it makes no sense to panic here. We are right about cryptocurrency. We are right about XRP's potential. And that fundamental truth matters way more than what happens over some short-term period where you're wishing for specific outcomes on specific timelines. The technology is sound. The adoption is growing. The regulatory clarity is improving. The institutional interest is building. Everything that attracted us to this space in the first place is still true. It's just getting stronger. So whether this bounce happens next week, next month, or next quarter, the ultimate destination remains the same. We're still headed toward a financial revolution, and XRP is positioned to play a massive role in that transformation. The only question is, will you have the patience and conviction to see it through? Or will you be another retail investor who sold right before the breakthrough? The choice is yours, but I know what I'm doing. I'm holding strong, accumulating on weakness, and keeping my eyes on the prize that drew me to this space in the first place. Life-changing wealth through revolutionary technology.